For our Devar Torah this morning, you are going to hear from Sue Slatkoff, who is a longtime member of Bethel Synagogue, a member of our board, and who a few months ago gave a beautiful talk about her mom and lessons from her mom. And it is a good Shabbat as we approach Mother's Day tomorrow to focus on the many blessings of the moms who gives us life. Sue.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. And when I opened the Torah today, the Chumash today, I saw that very Chumash, the beginning of it, of the Parsha today, is in the beginning of my talk. And I thought, boy, the rabbi really knew something, which he does. So I'm going to share some thoughts about my mom and about Jewish writings and about Tzedakah. And I've been thinking, when I wrote this back in March, I was really thinking about Tzedakah a lot in the face of the turmoil in the world, which we talk about here, which is, not in graphic terms or, but in acknowledging, which is just really important. And I was really been thinking about how much need there is among us, among so many individuals and communities. And how can I, as an individual, how can we as a family, as a community, as a country, give tzedakah? Do we give it freely or under certain conditions or with strings attached? If I give to people on one side of a conflict, what about the innocent victims on the other side? And who are our models? Who is my model in this realm? So the concept of tzedakah is in the beginning of this Shabbat Parsha in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 to 10, which we just read. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corner of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleaning of thy harvest. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather the fallen fruit of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am the Lord your God. So we've read that many, many times, and here it is again today. And this is like the basis of tzedakah, the basis of thinking about saving and giving to poor and people who are in need. And tzedakah has been written about over the centuries, and we're likely familiar with the teachings from the Rambam, from Maimonides, who described 8 levels of tzedakah in ascending order. The first one, number 8, is giving tzedakah grudgingly. Okay. I have to, so I will. Number 7, giving willingly, but less than a person should. They have so much more that they could give. Number 6, giving tzedakah after being asked to. Number 5, giving tzedakah before being asked. That's a good place in the middle. Number 4, giving publicly but to an unknown recipient. In other words, the recipient knows the identity of the donor, but the donor doesn't know where it's going. Number 3, giving anonymously to a known recipient. Number 2, giving tzedakah anonymously to an unknown recipient. And number 1, giving in a manner that enables the recipient to gain the means to financially support themselves and no longer rely financially on others. That's at the top. And that's who my mom was. Some of you met her, maybe, Millie Slatkoff. My granddaughter is named Millie after her. She and I became close friends as adults. I'm one of 6 children, so it was hard to be to show up, and be noticed as I was growing up. I'm the third, and my sister came a year after me. I was in my 30s when we became close. I was the mother of 2 young girls, working as a family physician and a teacher. My mom was in her 50s and the mother of 6 mostly grown children and the grandma of eventually 15 grandchildren. At that time, she was working as the administrative head of the second shift of the emergency room at Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem. And I was balancing caring for my family and for my patients and my students, and I was grateful for my mom's help. She was only an hour and a half away, and attention whenever she was able to make the trek to Chapel Hill. And I was in awe of how she managed to raise 6 kids herself, some of the time by herself. We shared our challenges in the workplace with one another as we truly underwent on-the-job assertiveness training. I was often the only woman at the table at the time. What a gift it was to celebrate our successes together as well as support one another through more difficult times. I remember how she panicked as she neared retirement at age 65, asking herself how and where she was going to find purpose in her life moving forward. During the 6 months before she stopped working, she spent her time and energy exploring activities and locations where she might volunteer, be of service, and take classes. She was quite successful in filling her weeks without paid work with meaning, volunteering in the pediatric playroom at the Children's Hospital in Winston-Salem, developing and facilitating programs for the elderly residents of the Blumenthal home that was in Clements at the time, interviewing people in need at the crisis control facility in Winston-Salem, which is pretty remarkable, and taking art classes for the first time in her life. She always said that she could not draw a circle. Well, she learned how to do that and much, much more. But I think one of the most impactful experiences I had of my mother's kindness and generosity occurred when she joined me on a trip to Washington, D.C., where I was taking my recertification board exam in family medicine. She kept herself occupied during the hours I was in testing, like in person with a pencil. Those were the old days. And in the evenings, we ventured into the DC urban neighborhood to try out restaurants with unique cuisine, including Ethiopian, which was not her favorite, but she was a good sport about it. And on the way back to our hotel, a woman walked out of the thick bushes next to the sidewalk and was begging for money. I watched my little mom, who at her highest maybe was 5 feet, and then she shrank and shrank and shrank. I watched her interview this young woman, asking her about her circumstances, why she was needing to beg for money, asking who else was in the bushes because she had seen some rustling around, and prompting the woman to pull out her teenage son, who was, a good foot taller than all of us. Mom wanted to know if the son was in school, which he was not. She asked why not, and brainstormed with the woman about how to retrieve her son's birth certificate, which he needed to register for school, from a storage unit that was in Virginia so that she could register him. Lastly, after some more discussion, Mom asked how much money the woman would need to get a room for herself and her son for the night. And she asked her a few other things. Mom and I pooled our resources and sent the woman and her son off to get a room for the night. And apparently there was another son somewhere else too, only after the woman promised to do what she needed to enroll her son in high school. Do we know that she did that? We don't know. But Mom trusted, and she knew a lot and had learned a lot, working at crisis control and other things. We were quiet as we got back to our hotel room. I was speechless in awe of and gratitude for my mom's generosity and kindness. When and where did Mom learn to be so generous and kind and capable? I think she was likely born that way. She was also the middle. She was the middle of 5. And life circumstances also reinforced those traits in her. She suffered hardships, which she weathered mostly with grace and definitely with fortitude. She found strength and benefited from her connection to her Judaism also, and taught us that. She participated actively in the Jewish community wherever she lived, in Baltimore, where she was born and raised, and started her family, in South Florida, where they had moved, and then the last 25 years of her life in Winston-Salem. She served so many roles in that community as a sisterhood president at Temple Emmanuel for many years, even though there was a term, but nobody else stepped up, so she kept doing it, you know. I mean, she made so many baked goods. It was phenomenal. Recruited Rabbi Steve Sager of blessed memory to teach as a resident scholar there for a weekend. Took classes there and here in Durham with me. Every time she was here, she came with me. She was always learning, mentoring, and supporting others, finding inspiration and meaning in Jewish ritual, gathering her family. There was no holiday that was complete without as many people that were in North Carolina coming to her house and eating her stuffed cabbage, right, Ron? Yeah. Gathering her family and community to celebrate. So I have something to reveal. My youngest sister, who's 11 years younger, is packing up her house in Hillsborough to move and downsize, and her youngest daughter's going off to college, and she found some things, and she sent me pictures in all of us pictures. Anybody want this or that or this or that? So I said, yeah. And her daughter brought this to me yesterday. And it was on the occasion of my mom's 80th birthday. And we had a big celebration at her synagogue and invited everybody we could think of that meant something to her and to us. And it was presented to her on the occasion of her birthday by a wonderful woman who was her friend and her mentee. I think she was the sisterhood president after Mom. Finally, she convinced her. And in her later years, she became Mom's doctor. In honor of her life, Mom's life of caring, serving, inspiring, leading, and contributing her share and more, I put that in, for the good of humanity. Millie, you will always be a shining example of a life well lived. So I will stretch this out and hang it on the wall. Yeah. Thank you. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are in this room and everyone who is not a biological mother, but you have mothered many in this world. So.